Monte Carlo, home of the rich and famous. People with wealth can be the first to adopt new trends, but they can also hold on to some traditional notions the rest of the world has moved on from. Mechanical watches, fountain pens, riding horses all used to be the only way of doing certain things, but now are reserved for connoisseurs, collectors, and those who can afford the higher prices they now all fetch. And where regular people buying cars are starting to really turn their backs on the humble saloon car in favour of SUVs and crossovers, when you go further up the luxury chain to the more expensive manufacturers, well, they're still making them. Cars, in fact, like this, the new Bentley Flying Spur, which is waving the flag for the traditional 3-box, 4-door shape. The modern incarnation of the Flying Spur came to us not that long after the Continental GT came back. So about 14 years ago, but for the first two generations, the Flying Spur always felt like, well, basically just a stretched Continental GT. But now for this, Bentley tells us in the third generation, they've completely overhauled it, pulled all the best parts of all the other cars and put it into something truly special. And while the Continental GT may be seen as the quintessential Bentley of the modern era, and the Bentayga is by far the best-selling Bentley, the Flying Spur offers drivers something different, something perhaps less fashionable, but nonetheless exquisite.
Now, you could be forgiven for having kind of forgotten about the Flying Spur. It's not as big as the full-on limousine Mulsanne, but it's longer and has more room in the back seats than the GT does. It does feel like they've gone to a lot of effort to make this car visually stand out from the pack. There is a much greater difference now between the Flying Spur and the GT than there ever has been. This feels a lot more well proportioned, the stance is better. The power line down the side is crisp and sharp, those Bentley haunches are there and they give it some real presence.
It's also the least shouty of all the Bentleys, the most subdued in presence, the least flashy. It's a handsome ride, but far more likely to quietly slide through traffic without drawing too much attention to itself. And with the newly restyled Flying B being able to be retracted into the bonnet, you can turn this into a legitimate Q car.
At the heart of it all is a very familiar beast indeed.
Up front, there's Bentley's very own 6-litre W12 engine, the same as in the Continental GT. Although Bentley do make a great V8, the way the W12 delivers power is still, to me, the only way to have your Bentley. 0 to 60 comes in just 3.7 seconds, and if you find a road long enough, it will get all the way up to 207 miles an hour. The gearbox is the same ZF 8-speed dual-clutch unit that the Continental GT has, which has been lifted from Porsche. Think of it as a transplanted PDK, and while I enjoyed the previous torque converter ZF gearbox in the previous generation, if you're going to find a new dual-clutch gearbox, then the Porsche PDK seems the best place to go. It's not just the gearbox though, the chassis has also been developed from that on the Panamera, making those cars brothers from other mothers, and frankly, I'm okay with that. There's now 626 brake horsepower on offer and a whopping 644 pounds-feet of torque.
That huge amount of torque that the car now has can almost feel like too much torque. It's great when you're going for an overtake and you just want to go from 60 to 80 miles an hour. That's fine, but off the line, my word, this thing packs a punch. Considering how heavy this car is, it's really quite impressive. The new 3-chamber air suspension allows the car to have a much greater variety in driving modes in terms of comfort or performance, and you can kind of dial it in with the Bentley control dial into how you want it. But keep it in Bentley mode, their kind of recommended automatic mode, and you do get a nice balance between it absorbing the bumps and keeping you from rolling. Obviously it's got the same 48-volt anti-roll system that we first saw in Bentayga and is now on the new Continental GT as well. Now in normal driving conditions, it's soft and serene and comfortable. MVH is limited to an absolute bare minimum and it's a very serene place to be. But if you need to go for an overtake or anything like that, plant your foot. And that wave of torque it gets quite scary quite quickly. There is no disguising the Flying Spur's weight though, and especially once you get it up to speed, you do notice that there is some heft to put about. The brakes are good enough that they can stop you dead. It's the biggest steel brakes fitted to any car in the world. Although the power is only up a small amount in this car, the huge amount of extra torque, the new suspension system, the new gearbox, it all ties together to make this a huge leap forward for the Flying Spur.
As a driver's car, it feels very similar to the new Continental GT, which is high praise indeed. The new cylinder deactivation technology makes it more economical on long journeys to add to the serene comfort and ease of driving. When you get to a more challenging stretch of road, you're rewarded with a much more engaging drive. It's perhaps slightly less direct on the steering than the Continental GT, but the similarities on handling are noticeable. The extra length of the Flying Spur over the Conti is actually offset by rear wheel steer, which really does make you forget how long the car actually is and massively improves handling.
Obviously the Bentley driving experience is maintained in this as you would expect, so everything you touch, everything you see, everything you smell is amazing. This is genuine Bentley leather. They may go for vegan options in future, but for now, whenever you buy a Bentley, it's clad with 7 or more bulls worth of leather. And as an optional extra in this car, we've got 3D leather, which at a glance looks like it's quilted and padded, but is actually this firm stuff in the door. The metal surfaces have got these tactile, knurled feels to it. Every stalk, every dial, everything feels great to the touch. The Flying Spur provides 3 separate kind of experiences. There's driving it as an owner, driving the car as a chauffeur, where you've got passengers who you want to ferry around in comfort. And then there's the experience of being a passenger, and you want to be able to enjoy all the luxuries that the car has to offer. And the Flying Spur manages to tick all of those boxes. The single biggest difference between the Flying Spur and the Continental GT is this right here, the back seat, whereas the GT is technically a 2+2. The Flying Spur, plenty of room, and not just room, comfort in abundancy. These headrests are some of the most comfortable things you could ever hope to lay your head on, and just you instantly want to nap. The control systems that you have, this new ejectable remote control here, if I press the eject button, it should come gently out to me. There, nice and nifty. Feels a little bit like a very high-end mobile phone. It allows me to control the media, the seats. I can slide the passenger seat in front of me forward to give myself even more legroom. I can control the blinds. It's just an extra way of being able to control the car. One of the coolest things is this gives me control over the flying bee in the front of the car. I can either raise or lower it, and the animation will show me it happening right there, which is good because from here I can't actually see the flying bee. Now, in the hands of a skilled chauffeur, this seat back here can be one of the most comfortable places to be in the world. If you have a spirited driver in the driver's seat, however, because you're so far back in the car, it can feel like you're being thrown around a little bit.
So that improved handling on challenging roads you get as the driver can potentially come at a cost to your rear seat passengers. My advice, drive it yourself or hire a great chauffeur.
And that's it. The Flying Spur does have supercar-like credentials in terms of its acceleration and its top speed. It seems a bit of a cliche, but we were doing some thinking. It's actually faster to 60 than a Lamborghini Murcielago. It's got a higher top speed than a Ferrari 599, and it's better looking than me.
So it drives pretty much like a Continental GT, and it has similar practicality to a Bentayga. So why go for the Flying Spur? While the world is turning its back on saloons, why should someone still fight the tides of fashion?
A saloon car has, well, it's got that executive vibe about it. Someone who knows their worth, who knows how important they are, but doesn't need to shout about it quite so loud. So why would you pick this over something like a Bentayga? Which I think is a far more valid comparison than comparing it to another saloon car, because really Bentley customers are going to be making that choice. Bentayga is super popular. You're going to see loads of them out on the road. Maybe that's reason enough to go with a saloon car. Be different, be old-fashioned, stand out. It's like dressing like a dandy. It's something that used to get done an awful lot, but now allows you to be a little bit different from the rest. In terms of practicality, yes, the Bentayga might have a slightly more boot space. If you fold the seats down, if you have that option, you can get a little bit more in. And yes, it has more ground clearance. I will not accept the ability for it to go off-road as a feature that you'd make your mind up on, because frankly, who has ever seen a Bentayga off-road?
The Flying Spur shows us that not only are saloon cars not dead, they can still be some of the best driver's cars in the world. Let the masses indulge themselves in oceans of SUVs. For those who really know the value of a great car, rides like the Flying Spur will be waiting in the wings.
Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to make sure you stay notified of all the films we put out on Carfection. Follow us on Instagram at Carfection Films. I'm at Drew Stern, and thank you so much. And a like on this would really help us out.